Welcome back to Viewpoint. We're examining this week's conference on Brexit and cross-border relations. It was organised by the University of Cádiz and hosted in San Roque and also in the University of Gibraltar. In the next 25 minutes, we'll hear from Professor Daniela Tilbury and also from former Deputy Chief Minister Peter Montegrifo, who spoke on the last day. First, though, back to San Roque, where Gibraltar's speakers all said clearly Spain must change its approach to Gibraltar.
Que lo diga un tribunal internacional y yo lo acepto. Pero que lo que no se puede estar es siempre barajando esas dos barajas, para que no sea nunca ni una ni la otra, sino la agua turbia en el medio entre las dos.
Sir Peter Caruana said that for too many years Spain has got away with occupying the muddy water between political and legal arguments when talking about Gibraltar. He said the government in Madrid needs to decide whether its argument on the rock is essentially political or legal in nature. He said it cannot be both.
What I've said to them is this. This problem is either political or legal in nature. If it's legal in nature, the place where civilized people resolve legal disputes is in a court of law, in this case an international court of law. Yet, oddly, we who have everything to lose are willing to go to that court, and Spain, which has everything to gain, is unwilling to go. So they've got to decide whether it's a legal problem or not. If it's a legal problem, they must go to the courts. If they decide it's not a legal problem because they don't want to go to the courts, then they must stop whining on about UN resolutions, because UN resolutions are about international law. If, on the other hand, they think it's a political problem and not a legal problem, and it's going to be one or the other. If they think it's not a legal problem, and therefore they don't want to go to a court, but it's a political problem, then, as a democracy in Western Europe in the 21st century, if it's a political problem, they've got to apply acceptable political principles to its handling and resolution. And in Europe, the only acceptable political principle to apply to a political problem are democratic principles. And democratic principles necessarily exclude imposing things on people against their will.
Very finally, are you hopeful that that might actually happen?
I think the PSOE in 2004, when they bravely signed up to the, albeit without making any concessions to us of substance or form, but when they signed up to the Trilateral Forum, accepted these realities. Look, the reality for Spain is that if we ever want to achieve our objective of getting Gibraltar back, it's got to be because we persuade the people of Gibraltar to want to join Spain. And that cannot be achieved with a stick in one hand. It's got to be achieved by friendly persuasion. Of course, our long-term objective for the Trilateral Forum was different. Our long-term objective was the opposite. It was to persuade Spanish public opinion to see Gibraltar in a different light and allow us to make our own free choices in respect of our future. But that is legitimate. In politics, it is perfectly legitimate to have different objectives for the resolution of a political problem. What is not acceptable, what is not legitimate, is to have anachronistic, undemocratic methodologies for achieving those objectives.
You were asked about the 10% knock that the pound has suffered since Brexit and what the effect might have been on the Gibraltar economy.
Well, look, all that does to the Gibraltar economy is that it makes products in Gibraltar cheaper and more attractive to people in Spain who may want to come as tourists or as residents in Spain to purchase goods in Gibraltar. So from that point of view, it is good for Gibraltar in terms of economic activity at a retail level. But of course, those who are buying in Gibraltar to sell at retail will soon find that their pounds don't go so far and prices may stabilize in some way. And people who are working in Gibraltar and who live in Spain are now suffering, of course, the fact that they need to convert their pounds into euros to pay their rents, to pay their mortgages, to buy their consumables. And that, of course, means that they've taken a 10% pay cut. But we've seen this before. We've seen the euro rise and fall. We've seen the pound rise and fall. I think the fall of the pound had, of course, a lot to do with Brexit, but a lot to do also with the lack of leadership in the United Kingdom, which has now been corrected. I think we'll see the pound come back. Look, it's not as if the European Union is not facing its own challenges. It's not as if the euro is not facing its own challenges. So I think the currency markets are not so much of an indication of what we need to be looking at.
So you spoke of, if I can, sovereignty en común. You said...
Yes, I don't like the cosoberanía title. I prefer to talk soberanía en común because I think that by the way of the crown we can arrive to a solution, because the very essential interests of the parties are, for the British, I think, in my opinion, the military and intelligence bases. For the Spanish, the traditional Spanish position is to recover something symbolically, the sovereignty over Gibraltar, and for the Gibraltar, the very hard interest is to be consulted, to have to decide their own future. So I think that how can we make a solution with these three essential questions? I think that by this city of the crown solution, with the European Union, of course, we must explore that kind of imaginative or new solutions. From the academic point of view, I think that we must give possibilities for other solutions, different from the traditional ones.
And on that question of giving possibilities, what did you make of the Chief Minister, Felipe Picardo's comment that Gibraltar will never be Spanish?
Well, in the future will never be Spanish. Perhaps in 2,000 years everything will be different in the world. But I can understand it. But the question is not to become Spanish, but the question is to somehow recover the lost city. And I think that this is a symbolic question, and the symbolic political question, we must give symbolic solutions. I think we must explore a kind of different, imaginative new solution. Monaco perhaps could be a good solution, Monaco in the Straits, but in my opinion the future, the solution must associate the Campo de Gibraltar to the Gibraltar solution.
And very, very finally, if I may, what role do the wishes of the people of Gibraltar play in that negotiation?
Well, it has been formally it has been admitted by our Ministry of Foreign Affairs that it must be consulted. But in the Margallo's position, he declares that it must be consulted ex post facto, after the treaty or after the agreement. We must consult Gibraltar. I think that it's an essential interest. It must be consulted. I think that it's a negotiating matter, how to consult the Gibraltar authorities, the Gibraltar people. I think that during the negotiation it must be consulted, but it depends. It depends of the question to be treated.
You said Gibraltarian nationalists are not for now asking for independence. Do you foresee a day when they might?
It is possible that they might, but things would need to change. For example, the fundamental issue, in my opinion, that holds back that aspiration is not economic, because we are an economic success. The fundamental aspect that holds that back is a political one, because of the threat to Spain. Were that ever to disappear, would it be possible for someone to decide that they want to promote that idea? It may be. It's not the case now, and I wasn't responding to the case now. The case now is that we are quite happy to be a British territory with our powers of self-government and to maintain our position as such.
And you think that that the Gibraltarians wouldn't contemplate a change in their sovereignty, regardless of times potentially getting difficult because of Brexit?
In my view, the answer to that is no. Gibraltarians will not contemplate a change, because it's not an economic answer to the question. It's an emotional one, and we feel very tied to our land, and we are not going to replace colonial rule by one state by colonial rule by two states. That would make no sense whatsoever. It would be a retrograde step to do that. So in my view, we will get the same result in a sovereignty referendum, were we to have it now or in future, after the effects of Brexit?
Well, the primary message that we brought today, and in fact that the cross-fronted group always brings to the table, is that of cooperation. Really what we're looking out for as the cross-fronted group is for the best interests for the workers and for the businesses on both sides of the border. We believe this is a symbiotic relationship, not just between Gibraltar and La Linea, although that's a very strong one, but even within the wider Campo Gibraltar area. So what we want to bring to the table as a message is that of cooperation, of dialogue, always within areas that we can understand each other. And I believe that not only has progress been made, but more progress can be made and will be made.
And in what areas specifically?
I mean, specifically what we look at are those areas in terms of the business relationships and the workers. So, for example, the transit of free transit of workers across the border, making sure that they're unimpeded, they don't have to suffer long queues. That means leaving and entering, be they Gibraltarian, Spanish, or from any other nationality. And those are the kind of victories we want to see. What we would like to see is a stability of the border, not just when we see certain parts of the year when the border is fluid and then other problematic times where it's not, but rather for people to have confidence that it's a stable border and that there's always going to be free transit of people and goods.
And for somebody who's been involved in sort of lengthy discussions and negotiations with British politicians and diplomats, how would you characterize going into a difficult period of negotiations for Britain and also for Gibraltar therein under Article 50? How would you characterize Gibraltar's relationship with Britain?
Well, look, I think it's important to bear in mind that Article 50 in its first phrase says that the notification is undertaken by the member state in accordance with its constitutional arrangements, to paraphrase, and that one of the important things for the UK to reflect on is that 3 nations of the 5 that took part, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Gibraltar, voted in favour of remaining within the EU, and the most democratically legitimate thing to do is to take account of the wishes of those populations. I think that going into a negotiation with the UK, the government will be positive. It will have all options on the table. It will canvass widely, as it is already doing with other places and other nations of the British community. And it will have plans to try to broker deals and the best possible negotiation for Gibraltar at different levels depending on the permutations. And I think we need to be positive and seize the opportunity we have been told that we will be fully involved, and I think that's an opportunity to be seized, and I'm sure the government will do that.
We're very worried about the future. We are a very difficult time. I think it's a turning point in our recent history, and we don't know what the Brexit consequences are going to be in Europe in general and here in particular. So we are trying to discuss and elaborate proposals just to find out how we can transform this crisis into new opportunities. And perhaps it's one of the most interesting points in this course.
And do you feel, Charles, that sort of opportunity has been reflected?
Yes,
so far?
absolutely. I think it shows the importance of the university, the idea of the university within society, an ability to mix society ideas, to focus on different ways of doing things, testing what is thought to be accepted wisdom, and this is something that shows the value of the university. We've heard Sir Peter Caruana today. I think it's the first major public speech that he's made since he left Parliament, or even since he left government. I think it was a fairly impressive analysis of the situation, but it is within the university ambit that he's been able to express himself. So our other hope, I know I speak for Professor Verlou also, is that we will increase our links with the University of Gibraltar, which is very well led at the moment by Professor Daniela Tilbury, and the hope is that as this progresses in the future, there'll be more links with the University of Gibraltar and greater confluence of ideas and initiatives.
I think it was very positive. Obviously that we gave a positive message, from my corner, but I was very pleased to see that the people that shared the table with me from the Spanish side also had very positive messages along the lines of what we are discussing and what we are trying to promote. Particularly we had the alcalde of La Línea, Juan Franco, and he was given a very, very positive message in terms of that. What we need is cooperation, and what we need is stability, and therefore for them, for example, for his particular corner, what he wanted is that stability so that there would be a possibility of investment into his jurisdiction.
And at a more local level, finally, are you hopeful that there might be a return to dialogue, and will we see a formula which sees 3 nations at a table again?
I'm certainly hopeful, and that was the message I was trying to put across today, that it's no to bilateralism and yes to trilateralism. And unless there is a return to tripartite talks, this is not going anywhere. And it may be difficult, and the reality is that it may be difficult for that to happen while the Partido Popular remains in power, and certainly El Señor Margallo remains as the Minister for Foreign Affairs, because he has proved himself to be someone who is of the old school of view and perspective of Gibraltar. We may need to wait, but we've waited a long time, and I'm sure that we've got the stamina to wait people out.
I would like to remark the role of the university in this regard, and perhaps these courses are just an example of how a university can cooperate. I'm very sorry not to find the sad word in English. And our role to give even the students or the different agents to share ideas, to discuss, to debate, and perhaps we will be able to take part in the shaping of the future and more positive relations.
And very finally, looking at the Article 50 negotiations for Britain's exit of the European Union, you spoke of, and I quote, mala leche, potentially coming into it. Can you explain your thinking there?
Well, look, I was with Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, last Saturday. His position in relation to Gibraltar is very clear. The position of the Prime Minister, Theresa May, is very clear. We will be fully involved in the process, which will seek to make the most for the United Kingdom, for all the devolved parliaments, and for Gibraltar of the new relationship with Europe. In relation to Gibraltar, I think the issue is de minimis for everybody else. 26 member states of the European Union, apart from Spain, would want a status that keeps Gibraltar part of the single market, that keeps freedom of movement in the region. Most of the people in Cádiz, in Andalusia, in the Campo de Gibraltar want us to remain with that sort of status. The issue, of course, is what will the central government in Madrid do? Will they approach this from the point of view of wanting to damage Gibraltar in order to try and strangle us economically if we do not accept joint sovereignty, which is the state position that they have put when 46 people have met? Yeah, it's incredible that the head of Spanish intelligence, the head of the Spanish armed forces, and other ministers have time to talk about, as if Spain had no other problems, they have time to talk about my activity and the activity of my government in the post-Brexit days. But look, they've met in order to try and make the most for the sovereignty claim. And what I say is that Spain should try and make the most of this for the people of the Campo de Gibraltar and the region. And that means helping the United Kingdom and Gibraltar to ensure we have a new deal with the European institutions, which allows us free access to the single market and freedom of movement, which enables us to create the maximum level of economic activity, the maximum level of jobs. That's what will be good for everyone.
I've tried today to talk about 2 main things, and remember I had to talk about la convivencia, neighborly relations, but there are 2 things I wanted to focus on. Firstly, the difficult history we've had on cooperation, that it's been a couple of steps forward and then steps backward, so there's that lack of trust that has emerged, rightly so, and therefore cooperation has never been allowed to work as it should have worked. That's the first thing, the history of cooperation. But secondly, now we have Brexit, and Brexit is a very real event, not just for the UK and for Gibraltar, but for the whole of Europe and with that Spain. Our cooperation in the past, to some extent, has been within, of course, a European Union framework. Outside that framework, we are now going to be put to the test. By we, I mean Spain, UK, Gibraltar. All of us are going to be put to the test. Are we going to comport ourselves as democrats in the 21st century, which I'm sure Britain and Gibraltar will, or are we going to be the subject of state blackmail in the sort of language that we're hearing from Madrid? I think that is a critical issue. There are very big questions at hand. The security and prosperity of the zone and of Europe is involved in all this process, and some very careful thinking is required.
Bienvenidos a la Universidad de Gibraltar, es un placer teneros aquí. Well, I've welcomed delegates to the University of Gibraltar. For most of them, it's the very first time that they have stepped into our new institution. So I said a few words to present them to our portfolio and also to say they're very welcome to engage in the higher education dialogues that surround the Brexit, the cross-frontier discussions, and the lines that cross between the legal and the political that need further analysis as they are absorbing all these facts and listening to various perspectives about these very important issues.
Gibraltar massively voted to stay in, and there's no doubt that our more obvious interests were to stay in. But there are opportunities. You know, the UK is a big economy. We have every expectation of piggybacking on any arrangement the UK has. So it's not doom and gloom, but it is change. And with that change comes some uncertainty, that's undeniable, but also some opportunity. But the main thing is that change means that the way we interact with the world, including Spain, will require rebooting. And it's therefore going to put us all to our very best. We're going to have to be at our very best to make sure that we don't make a mistake, that we are all sensible about this, because there are very big issues affecting not just this area, but Europe, which we have to bear in mind in dealing with these matters. And these comments are, of course, directed primarily at Madrid and Senor Margallo. I think there will be maturity and good sense in London and in Gibraltar, but I'm really making a call at the end of this speech. I made a call at the end of this speech for Senor Margallo and Senor Landaluse to think carefully, to reflect carefully about the politics they want to bring to this matter, because this is not a time for posturing, not a time for headlines. This is a time for real serious reflection and sensible, mature responses.
It's one of many collaborations that we have with universities in Spain. We are allied as well with the University of Granada. We're hoping to be signing up an MOU with the University of Seville. And certainly we're very close to the University Autónoma of Madrid with Professor Javier Benayo sitting in our academic board. So our relationships with Spanish universities is an important part of our future perspectives with regards to higher education. It would be senseless not to engage given our proximity and the history of higher education in Spain.
Well, I am of the view that there is no formula today, all right, or in the near future that can satisfy London, Madrid and Gibraltar. Our positions are too far apart, there is too much lack of trust. So even though academically you could try to come up with something clever, I really do believe that politically it is inconceivable that there should be any sort of arrangement of that type. And therefore the Brexit moment is not a moment in which these issues should be raised, because it's only designed to be raised as a form of pressure on Gibraltar. It's not raised to be helpful to Gibraltar or to the Campo or to the resolution of this matter. It's raised because it is perceived that we're under pressure, and therefore because we might be under pressure, we might be more susceptible. That is not the way to go about these things. If Madrid had a genuine and has a genuine attempt at some stage to make an offer to Gibraltar, it must first build the confidence, it must build the track record, and unfortunately they're very far away of having done any of those.
Thank you, the GBC, and thank you to the media to come to San Roque and to talk about our courses, because I think that we make a little step, we make little steps to have the better cooperation, a better cooperation between the Campo and Gibraltar. And from the university, we give an umbrella, a neutral umbrella for all the things we have to say, free and without any obstacle. Thank you.
A thought-provoking 3 days of speeches on Brexit and cross-border relations, organised by the University of Cádiz and brought to your TV screens by Viewpoint. And that's where this season comes to an end. Viewpoint now takes a break for a few weeks. We'll be back in September. For now, from the whole team at Broadcasting House, thanks for watching and good night.